As Detroit bounces back from bankruptcy, it's important that all residents have a chance to take part in its revival. In Nolan's column this week, he pointed out some reasons why it's tougher for African Americans to become entrepreneurs and what can be done to increase the number of minority small business owners. This has actually been a series now of columns, Nolan, that started a couple of weeks ago, back in mid-December, when you asked the question, where are all the African Americans in downtown and in a lot of the downtown establishments, in the Midtown restaurants? And I want you to take me through a little bit of the thought process, because you've started a very interesting dialogue in the area because of what you wrote about a month ago.
Well, I think the conversation has been ongoing. I mean, a lot of people have been talking about it. Just, I think this has intensified the discussion. And it's more, I think, than just, are there black faces in these hot new restaurants or on the streets of downtown. I think it's a bigger issue here, whether African Americans are fully participating in the revival of Detroit in terms of as entrepreneurs and as employees in these new companies, as occupants of these new apartments and lofts. And I think the answer is no. And you're hearing from a lot of people there's a growing resentment about the idea of folks not being, folks that have been here a long time, not being included or not feeling as welcome as perhaps they should feel. It's gotten a tremendous response. This past Sunday, I interviewed Eric Williams, who's a law professor at Wayne State and runs a program providing free legal service to start-up businesses. And he talked about the cultural and class obstacles for black entrepreneurship. They start a little later in life, they have fewer family resources to support them, and the venture capital community tends to overlook them in favor of others.
How do you ensure that people feel that they are a part of this revival process?
Well, you got to make them a part of it. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, one of the things that I think Nolan's column has really pointed up is the context in which this all takes place. Of course, we live in a society with great imbalances and inequities where access to capital, for instance, is not the same for African Americans as it is for whites, where that entrepreneurial sort of culture has not taken hold in the same way in the African American community as it has in others. And so what you're seeing is these wider systemic problems, all rooted in the history of systemic racism and bias playing out in this revitalization, and you've got to counter it actively. You have to do things with that in mind to say, we're going to try to make things come out a little differently.
Okay, you have to do things, and we have to do things to make it come out a little different. Who is the you and the we? Who does it come down to?
Some of it is the people who are participating. I mean, the businesses who are fueling this revitalization downtown. I mean, there's a finite number of them. They need to have more in the front of their minds what the diversity of this recovery looks like. Make more of an effort to find African Americans to participate. Make more of an effort to include African American businesses in the opportunities. How much construction is going on downtown, for instance, and how many black faces do you see on those construction sites? Those are things that people have to acknowledge up front and not just sort of say, well, we've hired who we can. You gotta make an effort and say, we're going to go out and make sure that this is a diverse workforce.
And this is, I think it's a reflection in large part to decades of failure of the education system in Detroit. There aren't as many qualified African Americans for these high-tech jobs and finance jobs that are being created in the city of Detroit. We've got to finally address that. But I think we also have to start closing opportunity and cultural gaps, as Steve mentioned. The wiping out over the last few decades of the business community, small business community in Detroit has stripped these kids of a lot of role models, of a lot of opportunities that exist in suburban communities but don't exist in their neighborhoods. And I think we have to start looking at, okay, how do we get over that barrier?
Is there a way to attract African Americans, small business owners who have moved out to the suburbs to come back to the city?
I think that's one of the there's so many different layers to this and dynamics and wrinkles. That's one of them as well, is that it's not like Southeast Michigan is lacking a healthy African American business community. It's not. There are lots of thriving businesses owned by African Americans. A lot of them are in the suburbs now because of the same. They've left the city for the same reason everyone else left, because of safety, because of cost, because of lack of good schools. I'm not sure how you attract some of those businesses back into the city, because they're gone for reasons that persist. Nolan and I were talking on the radio about this this week, and a caller called in, said he left the city 10 years ago and wouldn't really think about coming back.
He said primarily because of the schools.
Because of the schools. I think that's the kind of stuff that makes this a much tougher.
We also
last word on this.
We
Nolan.
also talked a little bit about the different aspirations. Downtown has become really cool for these white suburban kids, where this caller, another caller talked about his aspiration was to get enough, to be successful enough to leave Detroit, and that's a mindset we have to work on.
All right, and this is